Thank you for visiting Past the Wire TV, the YouTube channel of PastTheWire.com.
Read the best, and hope for the best.
Vekoma broke well on the outside, and
But you don't expect to get speed like this.
inside. Vekoma continues to battle on down the rail. It is Vekoma who's going to win the Met Mile.
Welcome to another episode of Past the Wire TV. We've got Michael Wilson on the grounds at Saratoga I could see the sign, Saffie Joseph's barn in the background. I don't think we could get a more authentic feel than we have with Mike. I mean, I've got some paraphernalia in the background, but it ain't like being on the ground in Saratoga. How are you, Mr. Wilson?
Fantastic. Yeah, no, I mean, there's nothing, obviously being a trainer, right? We love to live in the barn and we'd prefer to be here than anywhere else. So it's still a joy to kind of get up and come to the stables and see everything. And yeah, I mean, as you've said, John, many times on the show, Saratoga is just something else.
It is. It's got that feel as soon as you walk on the grounds. Really, as soon as you cross the Mohawk River Bridge, you start to feel it. But absolutely.
It's like going to Disneyland, but you feel it for like 100 miles outside New York until you get here. You just have that anticipation like a kid in the car.
Absolutely. We're going to do our Breeders' Cup domestic win and you're in show right now. The most interesting thing about the win and you're in race this week, the Bing Crosby from Del Mar, was that it probably didn't feature the best sprinter who ran this week, who won a race, set a record for 3 Grade 1 wins at Saratoga 3 years in a row. I don't think anybody's ever done that. And that wasn't a win and you're in race in the sprint. Not that it matters. But before we get to the win and you're in, let's talk a little bit about Jackie's Warrior, who, if they were running the sprint now, would probably be the favorite.
Yeah, I mean, Jackie's Warrior, obviously we've seen him as a 3-year-old, super impressive horse, as a younger horse, and when I say younger, I mean 3. And now that he's matured into a 4-year-old, he's just on a whole different sprinting level. It's kind of scary thinking of what he's capable of doing and how he fits into this whole mold. But it's really a horse that you watch a race and you're trying to pick a horse and say, maybe this horse, and obviously I'm in a barn that had 2 runners in the sprint division over the weekend, right? He had New York Traffic in that race, and then he had Drain the Clock in California for the race that we're going to talk about. So, you look at a horse, and I've got a couple horses in this barn. We had a winner here on Saturday, which was fantastic.
Now,
so
we're going to talk about that. We're going to save the best for last because that was impressive. But we'll get to that.
So we see these horses training, and it's awesome to see them. And New York Traffic's been training phenomenal. And I was kind of thinking, 3-1, maybe he'll get a shot at Jackie's Warrior. And Jackie's Warrior just put horses away. I mean, it's almost, he just abuses horses. It's not even you can't run against a horse like that and come out with any confidence. It's tough to face a horse like that.
The past performances speak for themselves. He's super fast, going 3/4 of a mile or 7/8 of a mile. He's just a handful and then some. And he doesn't need it. He's fast enough to get the lead whenever he wants it, but he really doesn't need it. He can sit off a horse, or even off 2 horses when he wants. But what impresses me a lot about Jackie's Warrior, and you as a horseman might get this, and maybe you'll tell me I'm wrong, and maybe you won't, but he seems to have an athletic swagger of confidence about him that you see in certain human athletes. There are certain human athletes, when they get on the court or get on the field or get in the ring or whatever the case may be, they've got a certain air about them of just confidence, and you just know they're good, and you know that they know that they're good and what their job is and what they're going to do. And for horses, it's a little bit more rare to see, at least from my eye. Maybe you as a trained horseman can recognize it better than I can. But with him, I even seem to think I recognize it. I see like a certain swagger, like, you know, looking like I'm
Right.
better than you, I'm better than you, you ain't no problem. He's just got that swagger to him that I like to see in any kind of athlete, be it human or equine. Am I on point there, or am I seeing
No,
something?
you're 100% right. I mean, he knows that he's a man toying with boys. And that's a thing that us as horsemen and trainers, we try and develop in these horses. So you'll have certain horses that just come into a barn with a lot of bravado and a lot of confidence. And, you know, you try and keep that there. And there's other horses that you have to really work to develop their confidence. And so as you place them throughout their career, especially when you have these really good horses, and that's kind of why, as we see around the country, people may be dodging some of the better horses and trying to find easier spots. Besides trying to win a purse, it's also a confidence builder. And so the more horses a race, more races, sorry, a horse wins. I was out at the jockey karaoke last night, so it was a phenomenal show. I'm a little tired.
Did you sing? Did you sing? Do we have video of you singing?
Well, I'm not a jockey, but if somebody will get footage, I am playing in the jockey horseman basketball game on Thursday night. So
Okay.
I already was talking trash last night to the guys, saying, you know, this year you won't be able to guard me. It'll be like Steph Curry. You know, we're just going to be raining threes on you. So,
Well, in
it's fun
fairness, some of those guys might be a little shorter than you, and in basketball,
A little-
distinct
a
advantage.
little, but I'll tell you what. And again, I'm really good at going on tangents, but Rat Ortiz, Jose Ortiz, and Manny Franco are really good basketball players. So getting back to swagger of athletes, and we just talked about three phenomenal athletes in what they do currently as jockeys. It's the same thing. When you start having wins, you start having confidence, and that confidence then spills over into everything you do. And when you come into a room with confidence, be it a horse, be it a human athlete, everybody else senses it. And so then when you're able to back up those performances over and over and over again, you'll see it in races with horses. And the more confident horses, and all the grade one horses that I've ever worked with, had that certain swagger built on them. But then they'll have a loss and they'll sulk for a week. And it's interesting because some people might not realize this is they do know when they win and they do know when they lose. And so if you keep horses on winning streaks, they just turn into monsters.
Yeah, you know, I'm glad you said that, because a lot of times I'll ask people, and I've always been fascinated with the, you know, do they know when they win or lose question? And
No, they absolutely do.
you know, to hear that from a horseman, it's just interesting, because you know, just fascinating part of the game and of the animal, in my opinion. Now, topic two, let's get to the horse that this show is kind of about, who deserves his share of credit for punching his ticket into the Breeders' Cup Sprint, American Theorem, for George Papaprodromou. You told me something before the show about George and this horse that I think is very interesting, that a lot of people may not know, that I'll allow you to tell everybody. But, you know, I didn't like him as a winner going into the race. And coming out, I was like, you know, he ran big today. I don't know who he really beat as far as, you know, top sprinters. I just didn't see him come out. Yeah, he punched his ticket in, and that was a very impressive race. But my gut tells me, and, you know, we're a long ways out, but there's going to be somebody faster or better than him come November, going 3/4 of a mile.
He's an interesting horse. I might have saw the race a little bit differently. So I'm close with George. George is a very nice guy. I got to know him a little bit more in California when I was out there making a fool of myself trying to train a second time. But George has a love for this horse, and it was apparent every time I'd see him. I mean, he even hot walks this horse. There's a salt chamber at Santa Anita to help horses with their airway, where we just put kind of it's basically like putting salt in the air, and you put the horses in the chamber and they just breathe in salt for about 30-40 minutes. It's called halotherapy. And George would take the horse over himself, right? And so a guy who has about 40 horses in his barn, the amount of care and attention that he's given to this horse. And I remember when the horse breezed at Del Mar, I was there, and I remember Baffert watching it work, and he's like, "That's that American Pharoah you have, right?" And George is like, yeah. He's like, "I'm going to buy that horse from you." So it was, even then people knew the horse had talent, and he was a good 2-year-old. He was an exciting 2-year-old, then kind of lost his way as everybody tried to stretch him out. And so I'm really happy for George. He's reeled off 2 straight wins at the sprint distance. The grade 2, what was it? He won the Triple Bend before, and then now he won the Bing Crosby. So I see him as a horse that now, he's floundered. He'd have a win, and then he'd have a couple off races, and they kept trying to run him the Santa Anita handicap. They kept trying to get him to route. Now they've cut him back to the sprint distance. I think this horse is going to get better and better and better. And I don't know if he's I wouldn't put it past him to be ready to face Jackie's Warrior come Breeders' Cup Sprint Day, because they went 108-3 at Del Mar, which is huge. And then obviously Jackie's Warrior ran a big time here at Saratoga, but he's one of the horses where I think this year, looking in California, you're kind of like, there's not a whole lot out there. But he put in a performance the other day that I thought might be able to make an East Coast, West Coast rivalry come Breeders' Cup.
Interesting, and one advantage I will say that he has, and this may not be consistent with how Keeneland often plays. It's known as a speed track, and there are some days that it develops a bias where it's very difficult to come off the pace. But some days it plays honest, and if it's playing honest on Breeders' Cup, as we all hope it will be, the sprint, usually, whether it's a big field or a small field, you're going to have some blazing front runners in the end, and he's one that comes off the pace. So there's a good chance he will get a pace setup that's favorable to him, making some noise late and running late. So, man, I'm definitely going to rethink it. And, I like what you told me about George liking him that much, and Bob saying, I want to buy him. Those are interesting tidbits that a lot of people might not know. And how about a shout out for Joe Bravo, who's got to be nearly as old as me and still booming winners. I mean, a friend of mine said to me the other day, he goes, wasn't it like in the 80s when they used to call him Jersey Joe when he was like winning every race in Monmouth? And I'm like, yeah, I think it was. And like now he's booting him in Del Mar, and it's 2022.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously he likes to be near the ocean, it seems, right? Whether it's Monmouth or Del Mar. But
Joe loves fishing and poker.
Oh,
so
okay. Well, there we go.
Fishing and poker, he's going to be a happy guy.
There we go. I mean, I think what's super interesting about it is I think Joe's probably one of the few riders that could drop his stick and still draw off on a horse in a grade 1.
Right, he did drop his whip. I saw that, and he actually mentioned it afterwards that he got a little worried, but it wasn't, but a few strides till he realized that he wasn't going to need it.
Well, and we talked about Joe and our passengers versus pilots thing. And what I think with Joe and what's so interesting with him, he's got such a strong hand ride, and he can stay busy on a horse to keep him going, whether he needs a whip or not. So I know that he left Monmouth when they put in that whole no whip rule. And I was kind of like, he's dodging the no whip rule. But hell, he really proved it the other day on American Theorem, being like, I don't even need it. I'll just put these horses to bed on a hand ride.
Yeah, no, that was for sure. Now, on another note, you did something at Saratoga the other day that I think is noteworthy, and I think warrants a good mention. And I'll take a little credit myself, because when we discussed the race prior, I told you the way to win that race was go to the lead and don't look back. And that's kind of what he did. You thought he might sit off the Clement horse a little bit and just win. But what was extremely impressive to me was, when we first discussed the horse, I was like, he's a pure sprinter stretching out. I guess, if we put him on the lead, we'll see if he can go all the way. And you were like, no, I claimed this horse to run in route races. And first time route, he ran lights out, better than he had ever run before. So my first question is, what about this horse did you see? And Saffie Joseph on the Fox telecast said flat out when they asked him, why did you claim this horse? He was like, I didn't. Michael Wilson claimed him to be a route horse. So what did you see in him that made you think he wanted to go long, which obviously he does?
Yeah, so it was very interesting seeing this horse and a lot of the stuff at Churchill Downs, right? There was so much competition over horses in terms of claiming them, and I'd keep losing shakes over and over and over again. And the owners challenged me. There's a new group of owners. This was actually what was so exciting. This is their first racehorse ever.
Wow.
So we got them their first racehorse ever. And there's even a little bit more to this backstory of, one of the managing partner told me that his son gave him a photo at Christmas, a winner's circle photo with Jose Ortiz on the back of a horse, and said, maybe one day we can be in the winner's circle with Jose Ortiz. So I'll fast forward this. So or rewind. So when I looked through the races, I said, I got to go out of the box now, guys. I'm going to have to look at some riskier horses, and we're just going to have to take some shots here. So first of all, Fort Larned won the Breeders' Cup Classic, right? He's a two-turn dirt
Correct.
horse. And so I first looked at, I said, why would a Fort Larned be sprinting? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense that a Fort Larned would want to sprint. And so that caught my attention first. I saw the horse had actually run a decent figure. I tend to claim, and some people disagree with me, I claim horses off of equibase numbers. I think equibase is a very good judge of class, of what I can get. And I know where I need to place those horses going forward and what types of numbers they can run and what type of competition they can be in. So even though he broke his maiden claiming 15, he ran a pretty good number on equibase. And then as he went forward, he was competitive in a 50 non-2. And I said, well, this could be a very interesting horse. And then I watched his replay. So when I claim horses, I first look at form and try and find flaws in the form and what's not maybe computing. Then I'll sit down and I'll watch race replays, and I'll watch the beginning race all the way up until the end. And so I watched this horse over and over and over again. He's a big horse and he's got a huge stride, but he doesn't have a huge turnover of foot. He's the type of horse that really wants to click off 12s or maybe sub 11s. So I said, this horse needs to go 2 turns. I'd work with enough of them to say, if you can click off, a little bit of sub 12 and maybe 11 and change, and you can do 12s and you can finish on horses while you're going 6. Well, once we stretch you out, if you can continue to do that, you should be able to be a route horse that goes 2 turns. So the pedigree made sense, the physique made sense, the stride made sense. And I called Saffie and I said, Saffie, you're going to laugh, but I'm going to claim you a really slow sprinter to go 2 turns on the dirt. And he's like, whatever you want to do. So we claimed the horse. First work back, he worked 45 and change at Churchill. And I turned to Saffie and said, look, we're not going to run him in the claiming 50. I don't want to lose this horse. Let's protect him. Let's take him up to Saratoga, run him in the starter 50. And he agreed. He said, let's see what we have. So going into the race, I had a feeling we were going to win. I just didn't have a feeling we were going to win like that. And I was so excited for the owners because we knocked off the checklist of Jose Ortiz in the winner's circle right off the bat. The horse won like a champ. I mean, and to get your first horse to have your first win at Saratoga and be on the raise. And then once we sat back and we looked at the time and we looked at the speed figures, then as I said, I go off of equibase. So this horse put up 103 equibase rating, which was better than Artorias ran in the Curlin. And if you look at Taiba and Cyberknife, they ran 104s in the Haskell. So now we're kind of having a very different conversation with this $30,000 horse we claimed. And we're trying to decide where we go next in terms of what we put him against and let him, as we just discussed, we want to build his confidence so he turns into a monster, right? So
let's tell everybody his name so they know who to follow.
So this horse is Kissalot. So he won the 3rd race at Saratoga on Saturday. He was 14-1, went wire to wire, won by 4 1/4 lengths. And he's just a 3-year-old that I think actually is going to be better at 4. He's still very kind of gangly and he's a gelding, so he doesn't hold a ton of muscle mass yet. And some of these horses, as they mature and they get older, they get better and better and better. So we're going to start looking potentially and see where we pick our spots and just develop this horse into hopefully what I think he could be after I saw that first work at Churchill Downs.
Now I'm going to throw a crazy question at you, and it's one you might not have discussed with the partners and with Saffie yet, but you want to know what race popped in my mind?
What race?
Pennsylvania Derby.
Oh, no, we've discussed it.
Okay, good.
So,
all right. All right. So I'm not as
initially-
bad as we think. I'm not as bad.
No, you're sharp. You're a sharp man.
That was the first race. After that, I thought back and I said, you know what? I would ask him about the Pennsylvania Derby.
Well, and that's part of it, right? So, the Jim Dandy was awfully impressive. He had Epicenter just destroy horses. And you think of Travers and you say, well, he's training so well in Saratoga. and he's doing really well, and you only get one shot at the Traverse, right? It doesn't happen that often that you can enter a horse in the Traverse. I said, well, maybe it'd be fun for everybody to go Traverse. But then we discussed it and we said, you know what, let's get him another confidence builder and build him up. So we're discussing at the moment potentially running in the Smarty Jones at Pennsylvania at Parks, and using that as a prep race. We want to nominate and see how that field shakes out and see, you know, if we should go there, or potentially running him in another allowance here, going to mile and 8 at Saratoga. And then hopefully we can go to the Pennsylvania Derby and see how that works. If everything goes to plan and works out. I mean, we obviously want him to duplicate his performance from what he did the other day. And if he does, then we'll keep having that conversation of potential Pennsylvania Derby. So John, you know a lot more than you give yourself credit for.
Not really, but I did text Jose that morning and I told him not to listen to you or Saffie if you told him not to go to the lead on that horse.
Well, I did mention it to Jose on the paddock. I said, Jose, I said, look, I said, I think you're going to end up on the lead. I said, I think it's just, you know, and I told the partners, I said, perfect situation is if we get away with 24-48, we'll put this field to bed. And then they said, well, you know, I said, if we get 24-48, it's a done deal because they'll go 112 and it'll draw clear of horses. So as we saw the race develop, I mentioned to Jose, I said, the last couple of races, Christoph's horse was the favorite, really wants the lead. He was in the 8 hole. I said, so if we get the lead and Christoph wants the lead, don't fight him for the lead, let him have the lead and track him. Well, they were happy to give us the lead and just let us do what we do on the front end. And the horse just won like I mean, I'm still in shock. I mean, I knew the horse was a good horse after watching him breeze a couple of times. He put 3 bullet works off the claim going into this race, but it's just surreal to kind of have everything come together. And I've never cried in a winner's circle.
Wow.
Even with horses that I've won with, even winning at Saratoga, never happened. And with these guys, I was in tears in the winner's circle.
That's
so it's just such
a story, man. That's a great Saratoga story. And you know, Saffie did win the Pennsylvania Derby with a horse he claimed.
With Math Wizard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, lightning can strike twice. So
I told him, I said, if anybody can do this, it's you. You know, you won it with Math
raise,
Wizard.
You know what I mean?
There's another.
You know, a $30,000 claim, win $1 million race is kind of fun, you know. So I mean, that's we've maybe touched on Forza Bloodstock a couple times, but that's what we do. So I always try and look for horses for value for owners to have, and try and find horses that we can get at the right price to then move up the ladder and make sure we get horses that pay for themselves. And what's interesting, and I explained it to these guys when we started getting them in the sport, I said, it's not far-fetched for you guys to be running in graded stakes races. A lot of people think you have to spend millions of dollars. And John, you and I touched on that on the show of average purchase price of a grade 1 horse. And Ray Pollock wrote that article, which confirmed average purchase price of grade 1 horse is $275,000. But there's so many good horses running around that just potentially need a change in environment and just need to be in a different situation, put at the right distance, right surface. And there's a world of difference. So a lot of people in our sport, and it kind of frustrates me seeing guys, because I've been in this barn and I was 100% clean trainer. You know, I never did anything nefarious with a horse. And so I know when I walk into a barn, I know if they run the barn the right way. And so I can tell you, I've been in this barn for several months. I've watched him. He's as clean as anybody is. But so many people talk about when a horse jumps up the ladder from claiming to graded stakes level, they say that person or that horse is being juiced. And a lot of times it's just having the horse in the right environment. And the horse I used as an example when I told these guys about, you never know what can happen when you claim a sprinter to route, was Bel Galante. So Bel Galante, I had a filly called Tanglewood Tail that beat up on Bel Galante at Belmont. Okay. And Bel Galante was claimed by Rudy, and then she reeled off grade 1 wins going route distances. So when you have a horse that's not quite quick enough to sprint, but has enough stamina to stay, they turn into significant horses. You know, and I agree 100%. And I think a lot of people miss the mark with those assumptions. And we have a show coming up where we're going to talk about trainers padding win percentages and how we're going to talk about that in detail. But one of the things we're going to talk about how that's not as good a barometer as most people seem to think in pinning out trainers who are cheating. But when I was claiming horses way back in the 90s, you know, early 90s, you know, one of the things that I would do and that I would look for, and again, I didn't have your expertise, but I would look to claim from guys who I knew or felt weren't paying as close attention to detail as we were going to pay, who weren't doing everything for the horse that we were going to do, who were kind of cutting corners with feed, with vet work, with supplements, with everything, legal stuff, but just not doing everything possible for that 12-5 claimer that you would do for a grade 1 horse. And we would get some of these horses, and within a week, you could see the transformation in the barn before we even ran them, before we even changed anything up. You would just see that the different program, the different feed, the different attention, everything would start to just transform. They look like a different animal. You know, you walk by the stall and they were a little listless, and a week later they would come to greet you and meet you. You know what I mean? It was like, you know, you could see the change. So I hear you. I get it. I've seen it firsthand, you know.
Horses are, and John, you touched on something phenomenal. Horses are like people, right? They know when they're treated well and they know when they're treated poorly. And so many of them, and not saying that there's an abundance of horses treated poorly, but what John touched on is it's a difference if you go to an Embassy Suites versus a 5-star hotel. When you go to a 5-star hotel, you just feel better. You know, it's a nice experience. Your life is phenomenal. And so that's literally the difference, is some of these horses are just moving from the Embassy Suites to a 5-star hotel and changing up from being trained by a trainer at Planet Fitness to a trainer who trains professional athletes. And so that's what really makes the difference.
I'm a Ritz-Carlton and Four Seasons guy. So you don't need to tell me. If there's a Ritz-Carlton, even if I got to drive an hour, I'm staying at the Ritz-Carlton. I don't care. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I get it. You know what I mean? So just completely different world. So, all right. Last question. And I think I know the answer. American Theorem, Breeders' Cup Sprint, contender, pretender?
I think he's a contender. And I think this horse is going to get better. Personally, obviously, the horse is probably doing well enough that they'll run him. I'm guessing they'll run him in Santa Anita in the, trying to remember the name of the race, but the grade 1 sprint at Santa Anita before they go into the Breeders' Cup. I think the spacing of the races is good enough that you'll keep this horse fresh and he'll keep getting better. American Theorem he's a 5-year-old, correct?
Yes, I believe
so. Sometimes, you know, some of these different age differences, there's a slight difference. There's a huge difference between 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. So what people don't understand is you take a good 3-year-old and you put them against a average 4-year-old, they're kind of on the same level. And there's a smaller difference between 4 and 5, but there still is a difference. So I think there's a 5-year-old horse in California that's maturing. I think you have a monster that we haven't seen the likes of in a while on the East Coast. But I actually think the race might end up being competitive come, you know, Keeneland. It'll be interesting to see because American Theorem hasn't really left California to run anywhere. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles Keeneland, how he handles that surface. As you said, sometimes it can be speed favoring. It's a tighter track, which would lend to what he's been running on. Saratoga has been a tiring track during the meet, especially during training. Del Mar and Santa Anita are very tiring tracks. So fitness-wise, I'll think you'll see American Theorem coming out of there extremely fit. And I think you'll see Epicenter doing the same. So it should be an awesome showdown, you know, come Breeders' Cup Day.
Yeah, and I'll be there with you for that one. I'm not making
exactly.
And to show you that I am not a closed-minded person, I started the show thinking pretender. But you kind of won me over, and mostly it's because of what you told me about George and Bob wanting to buy him and how George liked him so much and stuck by him and gave him the time, because that ties into the show we did about mega trainers and regular trainers, and when a trainer really gives that individualized attention to a horse, how it can pay off and how sometimes you lose that in a trainer who's got a program and hey, you either fit in my program or you don't. American Theorem is obviously getting that individual attention from George, and it's paying off in a big way. He's got a horse heading for the Breeders' Cup Sprint.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's exciting. So I appreciate it. It's a fun topic, John. Love talking about it with you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back with a lot more. We got some surprise shows coming up. So ciao for now.
See ya.
some exciting news. DRF Formulator, the gold standard in past performance information, is now free exclusively on DRF Bets. Join DRF Bets with the promo code WINNING. Get a $250 first deposit match bonus, a $10 free bet, and free Formulator already uploaded to your account. Access Formulator's premium features, including sortable trainer stats, race replays, personalized trip notes, and lots more. Free Formulator exclusively on DRF Bets.
Nobody does it better.